video, you're going to see the future.
U.S. Treasury is higher.
Breaking news. We've got a livestock there.
Hello, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. If you want to inoculate yourself against a warring world where there is disruption, despair, craziness and chaos, jump into that Rumble chat because you will empower yourself to handle conflict like a kind of inuring. In Christianity and maybe other faiths too, the idea of becoming inured, iron against iron, strengthens you. Pressure makes diamonds is common discourse. Get in that Rumble chat if you're watching this on YouTube or X. Join us on Rumble and toughen yourself right up. Or you could be a member of our locals community. A lot more gentle there. A lot more Maha than MAGA over in those circles. We've got a fantastic show today because, for one thing, we're talking about, well, in a sense, the global war is escalating. Mark Carney is now the Prime Minister of Canada. It went liberal. What a turnaround. We've had Trump's first 100 days. Let me know in the comments and chat what you think about the deportations, particularly as it pertains to free speech. Candace Owens is now on record as saying she regrets voting for Trump. Yeah, good old boo cocky. Iron sharpens iron. We got to get stronger together. You know, even if you are a full-on MAGA person, you got to know that people that operate in elite political spheres ultimately aren't going to save you. We have to recognize that we have to awaken ourselves, that there is only one savior upon whom we can rely. We've got an amazing show today because the mainstream are going for RFK. Fellow Englishman and brilliant comedian John Oliver says that RFK should be sacked. Let me know what you think about that in the comments and chat. We're going to start off with the Canada election. We're going to be talking about power outages over Europe. Now, look, Paul Schober, Buddy 1205 in the Rumble chat, or my friend Zypher 2000 and Sensitive Hearts in the local chat. Tell me what you think about this. When I saw that, power outages, I thought, we will look back at this era, the 2019, perhaps to around 2030 is my prediction, and we will recognize together that this was a period of global imperialism and conflict. First, the pandemic came, then the outages. Do you think the next global event will be power outages? I've got a sense that there's something in this. Like something like 90% of Spain and Portugal, they don't have access to electricity. You know, like often I've heard spoken of in the kind of media spheres that I dwell within, watching Joe Rogan say that it will take but a single solar flare to castrate all power and suddenly we'll be huddled again, Stone Age, around some campfire, quivering. You must be familiar with Einstein's famous maxim, I don't know how World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. It's something like that, isn't it? Something like that, like, you know, we will bring about our end. I saw you didn't like the Stevie Wonder, Raven 0001. I like these sunglasses. These are my new favourite sunglasses. Wit 1812. John Oliver is a daft wanker. I actually know him. Not anymore, of course not. I'm 1,000 worlds away. But I remember doing stand-up comedy with John Oliver in the UK. And I tell you this is something I think we've got to find together. He's a person of integrity. You might disagree with him. You might hate him. But the stand-up he was doing when I was doing stand-up back in the UK, he was saying more or less what he's saying now. He's a progressive, liberal guy from a working class background. He's a Liverpool football fan. I've got a soft spot for people that support Liverpool. Aren't all wankers daft? No. Well, yeah, you've heard me going on about Paul. Don't get me into the pornography again. I don't want to be thumping that tub. Forgive the foul image. No, what I want to say is this is, you know, like so many people will be in despair right now. And I don't even mean the kind of people that were anti-Trump or Trump hysteria syndrome folks or Trump derangement syndrome folks or maggots as they are now known in these quarters. I mean people that are pro-Trump. People will be concerned, I reckon, about the deportations, particularly some of the deportations that pertain to free speech. Again, whatever you think about Israel, you might be pro-Israel, you might be a Zionist, or you might believe that what's happening in Gaza now is an incomparable genocide. What we have to have, I think, is an open dialogue where you trust that the participants are acting in good faith and that the participants are not chaotic, changing their principles conveniently in order to suit their circumstances. I'm referring, of course, to Michelle Obama, who on a conversation with my friend Jay Shetty said that what keeps her up these days is the deportations. And if you're familiar with the Obama administration, who is the great deporter? It was Barack Obama. He deported more people than Trump, but we got so much to cover. We're going to be looking at Canada. Canada goes globalist once more. How did your man there, your conservative fella, throw the fight? How did he manage to balls that up? We're going to be talking about Trump's first 100 days. We've got some interesting stories on COVID. All of this and much, much more. But before we get into that, wherever you're watching us, X, YouTube, Rumble, Locals, Rumble Premium, let's have a little bit of fun before we delve into the despondency and dystopia. Let's see what's going on in the UK. The UK could run out of clean drinking water in 10 years as Minister warns of rationing if infrastructure not revamped. I'm going to take me a bottle of Mountain Dew or two for my trip to London coming up soon. What else is happening in the UK? World of Wonder, Island Penitentiary. This is a local radio station saying that there are 150 stabbings per day in the UK. And you know in the UK what they say about you lot. You got to get rid of them guns.
In the whole of England and Wales, it's 150 stabbings a day now, and it's risen 90% on a 10-year period. That's the whole of the UK. 150 a day, 46.
Let me know in the comments and chat, do you even trust any reporting, even around something as verifiable and as obvious as statistics? Do you think information gets amplified or ignored depending on the agenda of the news vessel or vassal? For example, in a minute later in the show, we'll be talking about John Oliver's condemnation of RFK. And you know me, I love Bobby Kennedy. And you've just heard what I said about John Oliver. I respect him. Do you think that John Oliver's line when it comes to autism, John Oliver's going to say, and does say on the show, I believe, not watched it yet, that RFK's rhetoric around autism is deliberately misleading, and there hasn't been a significant escalation in autism. There's just been an increase in testing. Now, I'm well aware that clinical trials can be misleading. We all know that. But I strongly, strongly believe that Bobby Kennedy is a straight up, good faith, open-hearted, legit politician and the kind of leader that the world needs right now. We'll get into that. L Diddy 857 in the Rumble chat. I wonder why the stabbings are so high. Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Gwyn Jones 75. You give too much grace to scumbags, Russell. Look, I'll tell you that. Like anyone that's been through storms, that anyone who's known struggles, and I guess that means all of us, right? You know, I recognize now that all of us live by the good grace of an almighty Saviour. I recognize now that I'm in no position to condemn or judge anyone. And I know what I am taught and what I am told is that my priority is for us to love one another as we have been loved. And how we have been loved is all the way to sacrifice. Now, it's real easy for me. I like you, I'm a comedian. I like judging people. I like criticizing people. I feel that impulse all the time. You wouldn't believe how many things every single day I don't say out loud because it would be mean or cruel or critical. And thankfully, I'm a comic, so like some of this stuff I can get away with and say, particularly in the company of people that I know that I'm good-hearted and not mean. But when I operate in this space with you, I'm trying my best to stay true, to walk the line, to stay in the fidelity of open-mindedness and authenticity. But what I am learning is that the world is a very, very complicated place. And we've got to find a new pathway. We can't live in the continual polar tension of hate. We can't, say, look, we're going to be talking about Canada in a second. And what's happened, presumably, is Canadian nationalism or Canada's identity, which appears to be on the basis of this election victory, tending towards liberalism and globalism, has been bolstered by the adjacent threat of Trump and MAGA populism. It seems that the Conservative leader wasn't able to galvanise and maximise growing nationalist sentiment around the world, the kind of populism that could have emerged from the trucker movement, for example, the truckers that during the COVID era and the draconian measures deployed by Trudeau in particular became a strong and powerful movement and exposed that liberalism in Canada, at least, was somewhat authoritarian. That's what it is, isn't it? When you call people Nazis, when you freeze bank accounts, all the stuff that went on in Canada. But we are in a time, I believe, where we're going to have to find a new way. And I don't think we're going to find it from political leaders, ultimately. Political leaders are administrators, managers, sometimes ingenious and entrepreneurial and rhetorical stars that capture and understand the moment. Indeed, many of your great presidents, or even many of your recent presidents, have been exactly that. Bill Clinton, spirit of the time. Barack Obama, spirit of the time. Even George W. Bush in his weird way and with reference to 9/11, spirit of the time. Trump, evidently that. You know when you've got a kind of placeholder president, Jimmy Carter's and the name, Bush, the first Bush, the one-termers, We've got to find our way, I suppose, to some place transcendent of political tribalism if we're going to navigate our way out of this potential hell. I want to thank you, Timcast, for the raid, or Mug Club for the raid, assuming that we've had such a thing. If you are not on Rumble yet, get on Rumble now. We have a lineup every single day. Crowder, me, Tim Pool, Dave Rubin's on every day. Kim Iverson, great people, beautiful people on both sides. Great people on both sides. Here's my homeboy, Winston Marshall, formerly of Mumford & Son, who's got a brilliant podcast and channel in the UK. You should check him out on, well, I wouldn't check out YouTube, it's a globalist nightmare, but follow his content. Winston Marshall is excellent. Here he is, taking advantage of the new press conference credentials being given to independent media to ask if people in the UK that are arrested for social media posts should be given political asylum. Let's have a look at this.
In Britain, we have had over a quarter of a million people issued non-crime hate incidents. As we speak, there are people in prison for quite literally reposting memes. We have extensive prison sentences and for tweets, social media posts, and general free speech issues. Would the Trump administration consider political asylum for British citizens in such a situation?
Well, to your latter question, it's a very good one. I have not heard that proposed to the president, nor have I spoken to him about that idea, but I certainly can and talk to our national security team and see if it's something the administration would entertain.
Yes, please.
To your
Yeah, take us in. People are fleeing the UK. You can't even get a sip of water or post the F word on Facebook without potentially being banged up, jailed and detained. Fascinating stuff. Let me know in the comments and chat what you think about that. Here's a lovely moment when former Tory Chief Secretary Simon Clarke, that's a right-wing political figure in my country, the United Kingdom, wrestles with and attempts to tackle the complexity around trans issues. And I suppose what he means by this, and let me know in the comments and chat what you think, that if anybody that is male can identify as female, what do we do with these categories? One of the moments where I thought in particular around sport and the separate categories for men's sports and women's sports made sense was when Marco Rubio, of all people, said, why have women's sports then? Like, why have it? Why not have just sport? Just have sport. And then we don't need to worry about any of this stuff. This is interesting because my understanding is live in the clip, the guy sort of realises the complexity of his position.
If trans men then have to use women's toilets, that's going to make women less safe, because how are you going to stop a man, a normal man, going into a woman's toilets and saying, I'm a trans man? And so I think we have to look at that's
follow that logic.
Why?
Because the point is that we're saying that people who are biologically men shouldn't be using women's toilets. That's the point of this ruling, among other things.
But a trans man is biologically a woman.
Someone who's transitioned from being a woman to a man is...
And so they would then have to use women's toilets.
I think this...
Complicated. It's a complicated world we're living in, baby. It's complicated. If human beings are in charge and we can all manipulate, manage and maneuver what's right, what's wrong, what virtues and principles we want to abide by, we're going to end up in chaos. That seems to be the case right now. Do you remember Kamala Harris? Remember her? Remember the dancing? Remember the peculiar announcements? Remember the Venn diagrams? Well, Kamala Harris is planning to, I understand, attack Trump. Kamala Harris plans pointed critique of Trump in first major speech since leaving office. I think that in a way, Kamala Harris is a perfect example of someone that didn't capture the spirit of the times. You know, the Democrat Party could have run under Bobby Kennedy, could have had Tulsi Gabbard as a leader, could have gone in 100 different directions, didn't do it. Looked like they're shaping up now for an AOC, Bernie Sanders super ticket for 2028, but Eric Trump says it's going to be Trump 2028. Let me know what you think about that in the comments and chat, and let me know what you think about Trump's first 100 days. We're going to be covering all of that a little later. What do you think about the deportations? What do you think about the wars? What do you think about the relationships with big business? What do you think about the tariffs? What do you think about the comments, particularly if you are a pro-Trump MAGA person? Are you, like Candace Owens, disappointed? Or do you believe this is a new golden age for America, America better forever? Better than ever. We're going to be covering the results of the Canadian election in a minute. A few more things to get into before that. John Kerry bristles as MSNBC host points out that Russia took Crimea under Obama. We talk, don't we, often about the details and particulars of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, how it escalated and maybe why it escalated, the role of NATO, the role of the CIA, the laboratories, the bases, the Maidan coup, all of the many nuances that the legacy media would obfuscate or otherwise ignore. Here's John Kerry realizing perhaps for the first time that Crimea was taken by Putin under the presidency of Barack Obama.
You were Secretary of State when Russia annexed Crimea. And I want to ask
when
you...
They stated,
yeah.
We did not allow them to annex it.
Right.
And we stood up against it and called it against international law. Yeah, they said it. But that doesn't, under international law, that does not make it theirs.
Can I ask you what...
Everyone's caught up in partisan balderdash, aren't they? Everyone's just trying to defend their own position. As a follower of Christ, I relinquish my own position. My position is irrelevant. Like you, I am dust on the wind of history. I will expire. Other than that, I may know eternal life through him. If all I want to worship is my Russellness, me and what I want and what I think, it's ridiculous. I want to ascend to the place that Thomas Merton, somewhat Buddhist, but ultimately Catholic preacher and speaker, who declares that pleasure and pain will ultimately become irrelevant, superficial, stimulants. If we are in God and God is in us, who cares about this stuff, man? We live in the continual worship of false idols. That's how you can achieve this perpetual polarity. It's because people, all of us, are overly stimulated by, oh, that's good news. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, that's good. Oh, an ice cream. Oh, no, a punch in the face. We have to transcend it. If we don't transcend it, we'll be stick and carroted through the pathways and mazes set out for us by the institutions of power. That's just what I think, though. Let me know what you think in the comments and chat. Here's Chuck Todd having a meltdown over right-wing virtue signalers. Oh, this is lovely. I love this. We covered this somewhat yesterday. Did you see at the White House press conference dinner, the geezer that was winning an award from like Axios or something going, you know, we were misled there by the government. They told us that Joe Biden was not in a state of senescence and mental decline, and fools we were, we believed him. We should have done better. You're damn right you should have done better. I've never seen anyone more sepulchral and decrepit. Poor old dear Joe Biden, nearly dead, weekend at Bernie's way through the entire campaign, that ridiculous debate where he stood there sort of like a mop with a bucket on it, running as president, just a near inanimate scarecrow figure. It wasn't like the government was feeding false information to the media. The media was actively participating. Remember? Don't you remember Rachel Maddow going, Joe Biden, he's older, but he's smarter. This is the best version of Joe Biden. Don't you remember Morning Joe Scarborough? He's as sharp as a tack. Don't you remember that spate of headlines and clips of everyone going, Joe Biden, he may look old to the untrained eye, but if you hone in under binoculars, you'll see he's got a firm and mighty, rampant cock like Genghis Khan. I don't know, man. I can't see it. I'm seeing an old guy, baffled, talking about corn pop and sniffing a child on the head. What are you guys all watching? Let's get into it.
This is not a media failure. This is a failure of the Democratic Party. And I just sort of the virtue signaling that some people have done to try to say that the media missed this story. They didn't miss this story. No. David Ignatius wrote, I just refuse to accept this stupid premise because it's a manufactured right-wing premise in order to stain the media. The media's got plenty of things to attack them for, and there are MSNBC and CNN and pundits that absolutely carried water for Joe Biden, but they're not journalists. They're former strategists that carried water for Joe Biden. The journalist, David Ignatius, wrote a very high-profile column in October of 23 saying, is he really running again? This doesn't seem like a good idea. People like me were promoting Dean Phillips's campaign because he was running
Wall Street Journal did a bunch of coverage.
So, it's not like this. This isn't WMDs, where the White House worked with the mainstream media to manufacture a story that did not exist. That was a press failure, massive press failure. This was not that failure. This is an attempt by some to virtue signal, and it's this horrible sort of pitting different news organizations against each other, when ultimately the people at fault are Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Jill Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, every elected member of Congress.
There you go. What a breakthrough. Let me know in the comments and chat what you think about that. Wherever you're watching us, X or YouTube, stay with us. We've got some fantastic stories. Are Canada leading a global liberal comeback? Is this the return of globalist liberalism in the shape of Mark Carney? And we'll be looking at Trump's 100 days in office. Are you satisfied? Are you not entertained? In an interview with The Atlantic, Trump said, I run the world. Who runs the world? Trump runs the world. We'll be talking about that when we come back. Here's a quick message, though, from one of our partners. I don't go anywhere without a sweet bag of this stuff, and if I have to force it into an internal body cavity, I'll do it. 1775, that's the sweet taste of revolution. The naughtiest of the beans, the darkest of the beans. But why should we be penalised for drinking coffee? We shouldn't. Why not have a coffee that could reverse time? Not like Marty McFly, going back time just to touch up his own mum. No, Marty. Gigawatts. Oh man, Biff. Come on, Biff. Biff, cut me some slack, Biff. I don't think I could take that kind of rejection. What Marty McFly, what George McFly, what Biff and all of the McFlys needed was 1775. As we peel back the layers of our foreskin, news media, like a modern illusion, corporate narratives, media manipulation, foreskin, governments playing God, we come to a simple realization. Everything they sell you is designed to keep you weak. Your food, your news, your medicine, your coffee, everything. And that's because a fully awakened version of you would be a threat to the system. Become a threat to the system with Sweet Lady 1775. Revolution juice, I call it. And I'm not talking about my semen. So what happens when you start asking questions? When you say, actually, no, I won't start my day with a chemical cocktail brewed by the same boardroom that funds censorship and pharma ads, you look elsewhere. You find something different, like 1775's Rejuvenate coffee, not made in a lab, not cooked up by an algorithm, but roasted weekly in Miami, like Don Johnson and the other lad, Crockett and Tubbs. That was it. This is from Crockett and Tubbs, the only powder out of Miami you can rely on and trust. When you get that white powder, you best be careful. You know what goes on in Miamski. This is brewed weekly in Miamski with real beans, real principles, and CA-AKG, a compound studied for its ability to support energy, recovery, and healthy aging at the cellular level. Some studies even suggest it could reverse biological age. Here it is. Look at this stuff. Delicious. Right in the throat. Delicious stuff. Making me feel better already. Just the corner of the box went in my larynx and I feel like a 9-year-old boy. Not in a Joe Biden way. Not in an Epstein Island way. I feel like I am the 9-year-old boy. Not like I want to dress him up and take him out to dinner like some sort of friend. What's wrong with these people? Imagine aging backwards while screaming into the void. Imagine reversing down the tunnel of time with your anus completely relaxed by these naughty beans. What could be better than that? It's single origin, mold-free, toxin-free, and woke-free, made by people who actually believe in things like bodily sovereignty, free speech, and the radical idea that your coffee shouldn't come with a lecture. Although that was a lecture, that just gave a weird fucking lecture, wasn't it? It was a weird lecture. I mean, if this was at a university in modern America, they'd fucking leave me out and deport me right now, wouldn't they? Go to 1775coffee.com, use the code BRAND and get 15% off. Rejuvenate your body, resist the machines, and wake up on your terms. 1775. Get younger now, baby. You know, buy the coffee. That was an unusual advert by anyone's reckoning, wasn't it? What's going on in there? Dear old Massey, who's our producer in charge of post-production, expressing himself through them edits, and I thank him and applaud him for his great and creative work there. Great use of clips. Get some of that 1775 coffee. Great sponsors. Great work. Some weird moments. The 9-year-old boy thing, that was weird. The whole thing, I was just actually watching that in a state of near bafflement. Wherever you're watching us, X, YouTube, join us over on Rumble. And if you can afford Rumble Premium, get Rumble Premium. We do additional content most days. You know, we stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you get to participate in the additional content of all of Rumble's premium content creators, Greenwald, Crowder, Tim Paul, all of them guys. All right, let's get into this. Our first main story of today. Who runs the world? Girls run the world. Is that right? No, Trump. I run the world. The country and the world, says Trump. Trump believes he's invincible, but the cracks are beginning to show. Now, that's what we'd expect from a publication like The Atlantic. But even Fox News are saying that maybe Trump's popularity is in decline. We'll be covering that a little later. Now, though, Canadian Revolution, the maple syrup comeback. This is it. Mark Carney, Liberal, an almost inconceivable turnaround in Canadian politics. The Liberals were like 25 points behind. Pierre Poilievre, conservative, pugnacious dude, peculiarly took the move of saying that he was anti-Trump, I suppose, because Canada has a curious relationship with the United States of America, and they can't just accept, can they, that 51st state rhetoric that Trump was playing. Let's have a look at the surprising victory of Mark Carney and discuss together what it means for the world. Is this a liberal comeback? Let's get into it. Here we go.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land.
This is the victory speech of Mark Carney, your new leader, Canada. Trudeau was unpopular, somewhat ridiculous, a little too Castro, a little too haircut, a little too black-faced. He's yesterday's man. He's gone and will soon be forgotten. What does Mark Carney represent? Let's pay close attention to this victory speech. These are moments where one can take the temperature of a political figure. They're moments of victory and then moments of departure. Often when you see a departing politician give their departure speech, it's like they've been unplugged from the Matrix and they're suddenly like, it was crazy in there. And I think, wow, where was this guy? Where was this person? I can rely on this person. I can trust him. But this is Mark Carney on the way in. Let's pay close attention to what he's saying. After this, we'll be looking at Trump's first 100 days and we'll be looking at some of the lies around clinical trials and vaccines. Fantastic stuff. Let's do this first.
Wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us.
It's standard political practice to emphasize an external threat in order to galvanize and mobilize a vote. Whether you're Adolf Hitler galvanizing the German people against the Jews and the various other groups that were penalized and executed under Nazism, or the common and popular rhetoric around migrants these days, it is very easy to, or effective, to galvanize a voter base by emphasizing an external threat. Remember, we've lived through the era of the Cold War, Islamic terrorism, and you can question and evaluate the legitimacy of each of those threats yourself. For example, now we are looking at a tripolar geopolitical world where China, Russia, and the United States of America vie for global supremacy. Beyond that, it has seemed to me for some time that there are sets of imperialist and bureaucratic powers that were using neoliberal and progressive politics to assert control over sets of nations that were ultimately coordinated by bureaucracies like the WHO, WEF, World Bank, etc., to present you a kind of progressive vision of the world that led to in the reckoning and rhetoric of Klaus Schwab as owning nothing and being happy. The rise of nationalism and populism is a prophylactic and bulwark against that, but it comes, of course, with its own problems. It comes with its othering of outside groups. Sometimes it comes with reductivism when it comes to complex social issues, and even, as we're seeing in the United States right now, free speech issues. But liberalism, I believe we identified together during the pandemic, presented a unique type of threat, because there's nothing more terrifying than when someone is claiming power in order to protect you. We saw in the pandemic era the general trend of give us authority and we will save you. Take your vaccination, we will protect you. Get into your house, wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart and you will be safe. No longer are there barbarians at the gate, there are germs in the air. Once the threat becomes microbial, the measures are limitless. The threats and legislation that can be deployed in order to protect you, if it's the air that you breathe that you need to be afraid of, are almost without scale and without limit. That's why for some time I have been more concerned about socially progressive, inverted commas, liberalism than nativism and populism. The nation served as a barrier against all-pervasive globalism, which I believe was the great threat of our time. And like you, probably, it seemed to me that the pandemic was some kind of dress rehearsal for a global takeover. Even these blackouts in Portugal and Spain, to me, bear the intuitive hallmark of rehearsals and attempts to discern new ways to legitimize authority. The powerful will always legitimize their authority in the terms and language of safety or convenience. No one's going to just tell you we're taking over because we want to. They're going to tell you we're taking over to protect you. That's why I think this is a pretty significant result in Canada. You have to actually say Trump does run the world in terms of his influence. Trump says this, Canada does that. There's no question that Trump's rhetoric around Canada has influenced the outcome of this election. Let me know what you think, though, about that in the comments and chat. We're going to continue with this story. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're leaving you now, and you're going to want to join us as we make an appraisal of Trump's first 100 days. We look at what Candace Owens has said about Donald Trump. She's disappointed. Are you disappointed? We're going to look at John Oliver talking about Bobby Kennedy. He says Bobby Kennedy's a crackpot. We have to get him out before he makes America sick again. All of this we're going to discuss, but firstly we are going to look in detail at the victory of Mark Carney, what it means for the world and what it means about liberalism versus nativism, the two political ideals that appear to define domestic politics at this time. Click the link in the description and join us. Let's go back to Mark Carney's victory speech.
That will never ever happen. But that's so